People of Earth, we come in peace.
Welcome to this neighborhood, neighbor. I am the Martian ambassador.
Des Moines and all of central Iowa, welcome to Mac's World Live. Mac's World is your world. Every day we talk about the issues and topics that matter most to you. And as always, it's your voice we want to hear in Mac's World. So join the conversation by calling 515-244-0077. And now, here's the host of Mac's World Live, J. Michael McCoy.
7 minutes after 4 o'clock, 4:07 on the 12th day of April in the Lord's year 2016. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is the Tuesday edition of Mac's World Live, which, as a tradition for... Tommy, we should go back and look. It's gotta be 12 years now.
You think so?
Well, I started over on 98 in 04, and you came in shortly after that.
We were hitting it pretty hard by 07, weren't we?
Well, and you gave me grief for Culver, and that was in 06, wasn't it? Wasn't that election in 06? Steve, you would know.
Yes. Well, it was Culver would have been 08, wouldn't he?
No, 06.
Get up to the microphone, Steve. We can't hear you.
It's an off year, so it would have been 06.
So it would have been
okay.
06, and you gave me grief on the air.
Well, justifiably so. And now you've done a mea culpa, and you've admitted that that was a bad decision, right?
Yes. Please forgive me, oh Lord Coates. No, I did. I did. I'm still not a straight line Republican voter.
Well, you know what Vilsack said once when he was asked shortly after the election, because he knew Culver. Culver had been his Secretary of State. He knew what a guy he was, and he was asked to describe his successor, and he said, I got 3 words for you: fat, dumb, lazy. And that pretty much characterized the 4 years of Chet. Yeah, that's pretty much characterized the 4 years of Chet Culver.
Wow. Well, anyway. All right, so we know we at least have a 10th anniversary here this year. In 16, but I think it was probably 04 or 05. Well, the election would have been in November of 6. Yeah, so probably about 10 years ago. All right, anyway. Okay. Steve Scheffler is our special guest today. He is with the Faith and Freedom Coalition. He's also the Republican National Committee man here in the state of Iowa. And one of the reasons I wanted to have Steve on today was because conventions were last weekend. Now, was it both Republican and Democratic conventions or just Republican?
Republicans.
Okay. Now, I'm hearing from all kinds of camps that Trump feels like he's getting his delegates stolen from him. Can you explain, as a committeeman, can you explain what he's talking about? I mean, I know I'm asking you to explain Donald Trump, which may be a lift, but...
All 50 states and 6 territories that send delegates to the National Convention have different party rules. And it behooves a candidate to study that process to figure out how delegates are elected to the National Convention. And so different states work different ways. So to the Cruz's campaign credit, they've apparently studied very carefully how the different states elect delegates. So in terms of truly stealing something, I wouldn't use that word. It's just that the Cruz campaign understands how that process is worked. Like I know one state, I don't know if it's South Carolina or some other state, but some state, in order to be a delegate to the National Convention in 2016, you had to have also been a delegate to the state convention in 2015, because this particular state has conventions every year, unlike Iowa.
Okay.
And so each state has different requirements by which a person can become a delegate to the National Convention. So, and those are always all very transparent rules that candidates can study that process.
So, I mean, Cruz got the most amount of delegates from Iowa because he won Iowa. Are there states out there where Trump has won, where Cruz is getting the majority of the delegates?
I think Louisiana was one case where, of course, that was a primary state, where Trump narrowly defeated Cruz, but Cruz has more delegates, and again, it's because he knew the process of how these delegates were elected. going back to your question, I don't want to get what you want to talk about, but here in Iowa, whoever gets the most votes and is elected a delegate, that's how it works out. So we're bound. Our delegates are bound in Iowa, as they are in 95%. 95% of the delegates across the country are bound in the first ballot. So regardless of who our particular delegates are from Iowa and who they supported in the caucuses, may be vastly different than the binding rule, and I can explain that binding rule to you if you want me to at some point in time.
Well, let me ask. Excuse me. Let me ask a question and see if maybe this is a question for the explanation. If I'm elected last Saturday as a delegate for Cruz, can I change my mind?
You talking about the national convention?
Yes.
Not on the first ballot, because the delegates are bound. On the second ballot, those 30 delegates from Iowa can do anything they want, but on the first vote,
they're required to go with who they were elected for.
No, it's just real briefly. So the way the binding applies in Iowa is if one candidate is nominated from the floor, just one, let's say it's Trump.
Okay.
All 30 delegates from Iowa are required to vote for Donald Trump, even if they supported other candidates in the caucuses. So a scenario, let's say 25 of the delegates from Iowa, of the 30 were Cruz supporters. But if Trump's the only one nominated, all 30 of those delegates are required to vote for Donald Trump. But if two people are nominated from the floor, Cruz and Trump, then on that first ballot, they will be bound that were parallel to what happened in the Iowa caucuses, provided they met the threshold. So that number would be 8 for Cruz, 7 for Trump, 7 for Rubio, 3 for Dr. Carson, and then 5 others got 1 apiece, which would be Bush, Kasich, Carly, Rand Paul, and Huckabee.
Okay.
So that's on that first ballot. If Trump and Cruz are nominated, those votes will be recorded that way, even though those other candidates like Huckabee and Carly and Rand Paul and Bush are no longer in the running. Those votes will be recorded just the way I told you on that first ballot. On the second ballot, those 30 delegates can support whoever they want to support.
Why wouldn't both Trump and Cruz be nominated?
Because of the rule that I opposed 4 years ago. It used to be that it took 5 states with a plurality of the delegates within that delegation. It took 5 of those states with a plurality. That's what was the minimum standard to get your name put in nomination. That was changed 4 years ago. And so now it's 8 states, but instead of a plurality, you have to have a majority of the delegates. And most states around the country are proportional. So if you think about that, that's much more difficult. So the only people that qualify right now for that 8-state rule is Trump, and I think Cruz is not there. I think Cruz is at 7. He'll probably get to 8. And so there has been some of this talk, which I oppose, by the powers that be, Ben Ginsburg, all these people that did these crazy things 4 years ago, that they want to lower the threshold from 8 to 5. And I don't like the 8-state rule. I don't like it because that was rammed down our throats 4 years ago. But to change the rules of engagement at this point, a week before the convention, which the Convention Rules Committee could do, would be, in my view, insanity. It would cause a division in the party that you couldn't repair for years and years. So they can change the rules to lower the threshold, but that would be bad.
Steve Scheffler is my guest today. He's with the Faith and Freedom Coalition. He's also the Republican National Committee person for the state of Iowa. Frank?
Let me ask you this. What case is John Kasich making? If you have this 8-state rule and you're going to lower it to 5, and let's say he wins 1 state or 2, why does he think he's the cat that ate the canary, that he's just this automatic in that he's going to win? What is he basing all of that on?
Well, I think he is hoping for a contested convention or a brokered convention, whatever you want. But again, for him to qualify to have his name put in nomination, the Rules Committee that met the week before the National Convention would lower that threshold. Well, as of now, he's only won Ohio, right?
Right.
So if he doesn't win any more states, a majority of the delegates, they would have to lower that threshold to 1. And of course, there have been some proposals, again, which I totally oppose, my counterpart from North Dakota has proposed allowing anybody that received even one delegate, which would be Carly and Bush, and even one delegate would automatically be qualified to be nominated from the floor. I oppose that because, first, if they want to be president, they had no business getting out of the race. And secondly, the voters apparently spoke and said, we don't want you.
Right.
And so my view is we need to respect the voters in the primary and the caucus states and say we honor that. And so my view, it should be one of those three. But again, Kasich, unless you lower the rules almost to the bare minimum of one or less, there's no way he can be nominated. And I do oppose that changing that rule at this time.
Do you see any other state he likely could even remotely pick up?
No.
Steve, I was doing some research this morning in preparation for our show, and I pulled up the Washington Examiner, and about halfway through the story, here your name pops up. Steve Scheffler, a 2016 Rules Committee member from Iowa, also served on the 2012 committee, and he fears any rule change that would allow a nominee has not been vetted by voters to secure the nomination. Now, you go on to say that you believe that nobody, and again, we had Paul Ryan come out this morning and said he would not accept and he would not seek the President of the United States. But you're in essence saying that anybody that hasn't been vetted, and I've heard some other people pick up that language, I think since you threw that out there some time ago, they need to be vetted to have their name seriously considered as our nominee. You want to elaborate on that
exactly.
story?
20 seconds, Steve. Mm-hmm. No, go ahead. 20 seconds.
Well, exactly, because number one, first of all, you would destroy the caucus process here in Iowa. And I think every candidate has to be vetted to understand where his or her strengths or weaknesses are at. And by somebody floating at the convention at the very last minute, those candidates can't be vetted. And it's a slap in the face of every grassroots activist that went to the caucuses or participated in their respective primaries.
Steve Scheffler, the Republican National Committee committeeman, is here today. I want to ask about brokered conventions. We'll get to that next, live on The Truth.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi. My name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rock and Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens. Rock on. This is Pat McManus for Rock and Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
21 minutes after 4 o'clock, 4:21 in the afternoon, Steve Scheffler, who is the Republican National Committee man for the state of Iowa, up again for re-election here in a few months. Also with the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Okay, now, Steve, Tom Coates is here. I got to remember that. All right, Frank, you're here too. So is Bob. So is Jeb. We're all here. Everybody's happy. Are you happy, Frank?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Very happy.
515-809-0993 is the Service Legends Truth text line. You can let us know what you're thinking through a text, or you can call. Jeb will answer, and we'll get you on 515-244-0077. All right, now, Steve, I want you to act like I'm your 6-year-old grandson. Do you have a 6-year-old grandson? Close.
I got about a 7-year-old granddaughter.
All right, I'm your 7-year-old grandson, and I say, Grandpa, what does a brokered convention mean? So explain it to me like I'm 7, although he probably already understands it.
I would tell him that a brokered convention is where when we get to the convention and the opening day, nobody has 1,237 votes. They don't have 50% plus 1 to secure the nomination.
All right.
As was the case in 1976 when you had the Ford-Reagan battle.
All right. And obviously Reagan won that.
But no, Ford did.
Oh, Ford did. I'm sorry.
But he didn't have the required 50% plus 1 going into the convention that day.
And how did Ford beat Reagan that year?
Well, I don't know all the details, but because he had the power of the presidency, they wined and dined them, and I don't know what they all did, but those unpledged delegates got an awful lot of extra loving, tender loving care.
I think I heard some story about they were promised visits to the White House.
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. All right, so if Donald Trump or Ted Cruz doesn't have 1,237 delegates walking into the July convention,
18th,
July 18th in Cleveland, then it's up for grabs?
Correct. And of course, the convention opens on Monday night, and the actual voting doesn't take place until, is that Wednesday night, I think? Yeah, Wednesday night. And so you've got that ensuing time for a couple of days, I guess, where they can try to wine and dine and work the uncommitted or unpledged delegates over, to try to get them over before Wednesday night.
Do we have some shenanigans going on during that time that a lot of Iowans or Americans would think would be unacceptable?
I suppose that's possible, but I'm not sure you would see that in the light of day.
Okay.
Where maybe people were promised certain things if they vote for them. But I'm not a campaign operative and not in the inside, so I don't really know what they would do,
Let me ask Steve this question.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Because I think much of what we're talking about is the presence of a detailed, organized, planned out ground game. And Iowa probably more than most states, because we have such a long run at it, and the retail politicking is our bread and butter. We saw that on exhibit here. It looks to me like Donald Trump comes in, the big events, he's the bigger-than-life media personality, he gets the crowds in, but he does not have the detailed ground game. Many of his offices in the individual states, as soon as the election's over, have been shut down, where Cruz continues to work his. He's got people on the ground where they're diligently working these things, and Colorado is but a good example of this, where he knows the system. Trump doesn't bother with it, and when he finds out he's lost some support here and there because of what Cruz is doing, he accuses him of chicanery. I'm not saying that, that the Colorado situation or the Pennsylvania or the South Carolina or any of those is exactly what everybody would want, but that's what their party officials and people have put together on their rules. And so at this point, it appears to me that Cruz is pretty much following the rules, and Trump's quite a few strides behind, and he's going to default position, which is to insult Cruz and his people. What do you think about that?
Well, exactly. Like here in Iowa, they never brought anybody into the state until the Monday before the district conventions on Saturday, and a really good guy, well-meaning, but at that point you're kind of grasping for straws to communicate with people, and the presence I visited 3 of the 4 district conventions, and there just wasn't much of a presence. And the people that they endorsed, by and large, lost, because 11 of the 12 delegates that were selected on Saturday were Cruz supporters, and the 12th one was not even a Trump supporter. The 12th one was an uncommitted one. Well,
I only went to one, and I was involved. But if mine were a microcosm of what was going on all over, the Cruz spokesman was very well coached, very well prepared. And the Trump guy came in. He wasn't even supposed to do it, but he had a Trump hat on and decided to sound like so he popped up, and we almost had nobody to speak for Donald Trump, which was an example of that. Now, there's another thing going on here, Steve. Months ago, Trump could say anything, and it just rolled off him like water off a duck's back. He said some things more recently that haven't rolled off his back, and he has lost ground in some of these polls. It's allowed Cruz to gain ground where he couldn't before. You want to have any comment on? And some of it has to do, there's a huge chasm. I've never seen such a chasm between the male and the female voters when it comes to Donald Trump. And that's costing him, too.
Well, please understand, I understand totally why a lot of Republicans are attracted to Donald Trump. Because, as Phyllis Schlafly said, they're tired of the lies, they're tired of the broken promises, and a lot of people are in the mindset of, you've told us a million times, and I'm fed up. I don't have an open mind, and I'm gonna go with somebody who wants to shake up the system. So I totally get that, and I think Donald Trump has a good message on the border and a lot of other issues. My only concern and urging of him and his supporters is I wish he would not try to, scald people that disagree with him. Of course, Cruz's people, when you get into the heat of a campaign, things are said and done that maybe wouldn't normally be done. But I think there's a lot of things I agree with him, but he just needs to maybe kind of, hopefully, because if he's a nominee, he's going to need those people on board to get him elected. So you can't burn all those bridges.
Well, and we had a caller, Mac, a few weeks ago called in that said Trump can't beat Hillary. We've got to get him out of there. And I took issue with him. I said the polls will change. There's a poll out today. I don't know if you've seen it, Steve, but it shows that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton on a national poll within the margin of error.
Oh, really?
Oh, I mean, now neither one of them are getting over 0.5%, over 50%, but it's within the margin of error. And so, and Cruz is actually a little bit behind, but I don't worry about the polls here in April. And I know that Hillary is so unlikable, has so many skeletons in the closet, that anybody worth their salt, if we can unite, can beat her. I don't care if it's Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Kasich, any of them can beat her if we unite.
Well, sure. And of course, back in 1976, Gerald Ford was 17 points coming out of the convention behind Carter, and only lost by a small whisker. So, a lot of things can change from July to November.
Exactly.
Steve Scheffler is our guest today, along with Tom Coates. Steve is with the Faith and Freedom Coalition and also is the Republican National Committee man, not committee person.
Right.
Committee man for the state of Iowa. Frank?
Let me put forth this theory that I have and see what you think of it. This thing was all set up for Jeb Bush. I don't think Trump ever really wanted presidency. I don't know. I never thought he really wanted it, but I think what happened is this thing was paved for Jeb Bush. He had the bankroll. He was backed by the GOP. I think Florida moved their role up so that they could be earlier in the primary season. It was a winner-take-all thing for Jeb Bush. It was set up for that. And here's Donald Trump takes on this 18-man battle royale known as the GOP debate, and he just basically picked up Andre the Giant Bush and tossed him over the ropes, and nobody said a word. Ted Cruz didn't say a word. Nobody said a word. They all sat by and almost silently cheered while he was doing it. In fact, Ted Cruz was Donald Trump's best bud at that time, if you remember. And people started to take notice that, hey, Trump knocked Bush on his rear. And people started to take notice of that, and that phenomenon of Trump took off with the American people is if, hey, he could do that to Bush and the GOP. And what the conservatives were afraid of is another Mitt Romney. They did not, the libertarians and the conservatives did not want another, by default, another Mitt Romney. So they coalesced together to get behind a candidate this time and not get left away from the table, which was Ted Cruz. So what I'm saying is I don't think the phenomenon of Trump took off until the people actually saw him just punch him right square in the face with that low energy tag. And when he was a dead man standing there, he would just look like somebody knocked the stuffing out of him.
So what's your question?
So the question, well, again, Tom Coates, what do you think of that?
I think that's a good characterization, Steve. Your impression on what he said, the coming right out of the chute, putting a tag on Jeb, and he never recovered from that tag, despite how many millions of dollars he spent.
I think he's exactly right. I think that stuck to him like glue. And of course, Bush had gotten kind of rusty because he hadn't run for public office for several years. And of course, he kind of got into his stride later on, but at that point it was too little and too late. And, I think, unlike some conservatives, I think, there were some disagreements, of course, I had with Jeb Bush, but I think he was still a better man than a lot of people on our base depicted him. Because if you look at his record as governor, he was actually a very conservative governor when he governed.
He was, but unfortunately he became less conservative.
But unfortunately he had the Bush name, and I think that voters were in the mode that they didn't want the same old, and I think that's, and unfortunately, why both Democrats didn't want the Clinton thing again. But people were bushed out, I think.
Well, that and the fact he had come away from some of those earlier stated conservative principles in the interim. Now, I don't know whether time or tides or lobby money or whatever, but some of those positions he was much less conservative right now than he was when he was governor of Florida.
515-244-0000. That's the number to call if you'd like to join Steve Scheffler, Tom Coates, and the rest of the clan here on the radio this afternoon as we discuss the Republican convention here last Saturday in Iowa. So there are the delegates have been set.
No, not all of them.
Not all of them.
12 of the, or actually 15 of the 30.
So half of the 30. And when will the other 15 be set?
Well, last Saturday, there were 2 people elected from each congressional district, so that's 8 people together. Those 8 people are what we call a state nominating committee. Those 8 people will meet at state party headquarters this coming Saturday for the purpose of putting together what's called a large slate of 15 delegates and 15 alternate delegates to the National Convention. Now, those delegates still have to be approved at the state convention, but traditionally, they are. There have been cases, there's a process, and that's too complicated to get into here today. There is a process to pull those off. But that slate of 15 delegates and 15 alternates has to still be approved, but there's a state nominating committee has to put those people together, and then those will be approved at the state convention in May.
And those 30 people will go to represent the state of Iowa at the Republican National Convention.
Correct.
Now, I know this is a little off topic, but is that something that's self-funded, or does the state or the Republican Party pay for all that transportation, rooms, and expenses out there?
No, that's the delegates.
That's the delegates. Good.
Right.
Good.
Now, once they get there, and we'll be actually, in fact, we just found out yesterday, there'll be a hotel that's assigned to the Iowa delegates, and it's smart for them to stay there. Otherwise, getting through security will be a nightmare. And there'll be like 2 buses every day that transport the delegates back and forth to the convention hall. And of course, that's all paid for. But as far as transportation, getting out of there in their hotel room, that's the delegates' responsibility.
Steve Scheffler is my guest. He is the Republican National Committee man for the state of Iowa. He's also with the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Who does he think is going to win? It's the big election. We'll talk with him next, live on The Truth.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza. I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Uh, 4:38, 22 minutes before the top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News. Steve has an interview with CNN
tomorrow.
So he's going to have to get out of here a little bit early today, and so we just have the last 10 minutes with him. If you've got a question for Steve Scheffler, who is with the Faith and Freedom Coalition, and also is the Republican National Committee man. I always want to say committee person, but he's the committee man because
there's a committee woman too.
And that's Tamara, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, and the both of you are up for election.
Mm-hmm.
And who are you running against? I mean, you don't have to say their name, but do you know who it is?
I know who it is.
All right, and so it's just two people?
Well, it could be. I mean, anybody could get nominated from the floor. If somebody gets up and says, I nominate Joe Blow, anybody can run.
Okay, but it's probably going to be you and this other person?
Probably.
Both Republicans?
They have to because it's a Republican state convention. So
okay, I guess that was a stupid question.
No. Well, now Bernie's a Democrat, and he never was before. So
yeah, it might be different now. Tom Coates is in the house. You can also text us on the Service Legend Truth text line at 515-809-0993. So, do you have any restrictions on whether you can predict who's going to come out ahead at the Republican National Convention?
I can honestly tell you, if I had to be a betting man today with a gun to my head, I would say it's probably 50-50 that Donald Trump ends up with 1237 before the convention.
Okay. And if that happens, nothing can change that.
No. I mean, once he has secured 1,237 pledged delegates that are obligated to vote for him, then it's over. I mean, you'll still go through the formal process, but if he's got 12, because remember, 95% of the delegates are pledged. So even if they might support Cruz privately, But if their state rules say that they have to vote for Donald Trump, if they're pledged, they have to do that. There's no wiggle room.
All right, so they walk in with 1,237 pledged delegates. Donald Trump is the nominee.
Correct.
Is pledged a magic word here? Is that a word we need to worry about? You said 95% were pledged.
In order for them to be duly elected and to fulfill their legal responsibilities, they can't wander off the reservation. So like in Iowa, our chairman, the chairman of the delegation, whether that's Branstad or Jeff Kaufman or Steve King or whoever it is, they will get up and make that announcement. 30 delegates for Trump, or if they're both nominated, that split that I mentioned before.
Yeah, the 8-7-7.
So it's not like 30 delegates get up and say, I vote for Donald Trump, or you'd be there all day and all night. So that the person, the chair of that delegation, will announce that result, and it has to be that way. There is no wiggle room.
And you think there's a I'm not trying to pin you down, Steve. I'm really not. Don't see me as one of those.
Yeah, because I got to still seek re-election. I can't get myself in a box.
No, I don't want you to get. So let me ask Tom, because I don't want to put. Steve's a friend of the show, and I don't want to put him in a difficult position. But you understand this language better than anybody here in the room.
Well, Steve does.
Well, but I'm not including Steve because he can't. I don't want him to get in trouble. I want him to win the election.
Okay.
So when the comment is made that it's 50-50 chance, that means Cruz has as much of a chance as Trump to get the nomination.
Well, he's saying that he thinks that there's still a shot, at least a coin flip shot, that Trump can get to that magic number. Now, when he lost Wisconsin, a lot of people said that his chances diminished dramatically. And at one point, Donald Trump was supposed to win Wisconsin. And some of his comments caught up with him, and Cruz's ground game caught him, and he didn't. I think if you ask me, based on what I'm looking at, I think it's better than a coin flip chance that none of them get to that point, Trump or anybody else, on the first ballot. And that's where Cruz's ground game is going to come in.
So Cruz wants to go into a brokered convention.
Well, yeah, he does, and of course
he can't get 1237.
No, I don't think.
Well, I think they're saying he would have to get about 85% of the delegates that are available between now and the end of the process, and that's not highly likely.
And he's not going to win New York, probably.
Doesn't look like it. Even if you, and Hillary is supposed to have won New York overwhelmingly, and her lead is dwindling a little bit in a lot of places, just like Trump's is. But let's assume it's what it is, and that Trump wins overwhelmingly. But right now, Cruz has been spending time out in California. It's the very last state.
And the reason for that, and again, it's a complicated thing from one state to another, but. So a lot of the delegates are awarded by congressional districts. So like I think in California, if you're the top vote getter, you get 2 of the delegates. And if you're the second one, then you get the other delegate. So it's basically a contest running for president by congressional district in some of these states like California. So that's where it becomes very kind of complicated.
Right. And Trump's not doing any of that, and Cruz is out there. And it's the very last state, although it's the largest state, isn't it, with
172 delegates.
Yeah.
Frank?
Is there any way, if Trump has the 1237, is there any conceivable way that the Republicans could somehow take it away from him?
No, absolutely not. Matt, can I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
It will be interesting if Trump ends up with, say, 1,100, 1,150, 1,200, but he's short of the 1237. And then I think then it becomes a question: is how far is Cruz behind? Is he 400 or 500 votes behind Trump, or is he only 100? If Trump is short of the 1237, but yet he's substantially ahead of Cruz, then I suppose some of the unpledged delegates will have to figure out, what the best scenario for them is. So that's where it could get very interesting in how these individual delegates are going to vote on a second ballot.
So Steve, if after California, which is before the convention, Trump has 1237, that's it.
Correct.
That's it. Trump will be our nominee.
Yeah. As long as they're pledged delegates, yeah, you bet.
Okay. What do you say to those out there? Because I'm surrounded by them. I dislike them very much. Politically, I dislike them. Well, my candidate isn't there. I can't stand Trump, so I'm going to either A, stay home, or B, I'm going to write in Mickey Mouse.
Mac, there's a new poll out on that I was just going to bring up.
Okay.
How Cruz supporters would vote in November if he were not the candidate. 6% of them would vote for Hillary. 56% would vote for Donald Trump. 26% for a third party, and 9% of them not vote. It is not that different from the Trump voters. Only 2% said they would vote for Hillary. 53% would vote for Ted Cruz if he were the nominee instead of their man Trump. 28% would vote for a third party, and 15% of them would stay home and not vote.
Now, is third party also write-in?
Well, it could be any kind of a third party. And, of course, I think, Steve, I want to get your opinion on this. I think this is vitally important. Let's say Trump does not get it. He doesn't get it on the first ballot. Cruz takes it away from him on the second. There's already some bad blood between the two of them. Can he jump off and run a third-party candidacy at that time?
Well, again, you're talking about 50 states with their election laws, and I think some states he could get on the ballot, but there's other states he couldn't get on, so I think it becomes kind of a scenario where he could get on some ballots but not others. Hey, but going back, Mac, talking about some people would sit this election out.
Yeah.
I'm like Phyllis Schlafly, and if you know about Phyllis Schlafly, she's as far to the right as you can get, and that's a compliment, not a derogatory thing. But she has often said, if you're looking for a perfect candidate, Jesus Christ's name won't be on the ballot anytime soon.
Okay.
All these candidates have political wars, just like you and I, because we're human beings. And in my view, either Trump or Cruz, or Kasich for that matter, are 110% better than this woman, who in my view is ethically flawed, who probably should be in jail, who makes Richard Nixon look good. She is a persona of evil in my book. And what she did with her hands behind her hips on the Benghazi thing, she's disgusting, despicable. I could get excited about either one of these guys, and I would hope to God that most of our people will, because, perfect example, we're twisting in the wind now because of the Supreme Court vacancy, right?
Right.
Even though McCain was far from good in terms of a lot of our voter base, or Romney for that matter, I think we would be twisting less in the wind today with that vacancy if either one of them were president right now.
I got 20 seconds before we're done. Should Trump and Cruz join up as president and vice president?
I don't want to make that judgment. I think they're going to have to decide it themselves, and I don't want to even give that advice.
Okay. Steve, thank you for being here today. Steve Scheffler has been our guest. He's the National Republican Committeeman for the state of Iowa. He's also with the Faith and Freedom Coalition. He has to take off. We'll come back. Tom and I and Frank and Bob and Jeb and you will come back and we'll discuss that vice president ticket. What would be the winning ticket to absolutely destroy Hillary Clinton in a November election? We'll talk about that when we come back next, live on The Truth.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens. Rock on. This is Pat McManus for Rockton Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
Northern Lights Pizza, your home of the tasty crust. Our garlic butter sauce now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common, everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
4:50, 10 minutes before the top of the hour Salem Radio Network News. And then Ask Hank. Hank, the Bible Answer Man, at 1-888. Ask Hank. You can call him there. I call in now and get in there and get some questions asked. Steve Scheffler was here. He's gone. And, when I have someone as a guest in this studio and we're not opposing each other on anything essential, then they're treated as a guest. And I did not want to put Steve in a difficult position to try to determine who the ticket should be on the Republican side with the goal in mind to win the election in November. But Steve's now gone, and it's safe for us to talk about those things. So here's what I heard Steve say. Really, Trump's going to be the nominee. Something very earth-shaking would have to change, and that Cruz would have to almost sweep 85% of the states left.
Well, yeah, on the first ballot. Now, keep in mind, when he answered that question, he said it's about a coin flip whether he'll get it on the first ballot. I didn't hear him say after that, because if he doesn't get it, and I think it's better than a coin flip, Frank, that he doesn't get it on the first ballot.
He said he thought it was 50-50 that he'll have the 1237. So
yes.
He's given it a better than even chance, I think.
Well, he's given it at least an even chance that he gets it. But I think it's better than even that he doesn't get the 1237 on the first ballot, and then it gets thrown wide open into this brokered convention that you're talking about.
You think that's what's going to happen?
I do think that's what. If you ask me to, I'd put 60-40 on it today. If you want me to handicap it, that Trump does not get the 1237 on that first ballot.
All right. So if Trump doesn't get the 1237, do you think that means Cruz takes it in the end?
I think the likelihood is then that Cruz would probably be, because much of the establishment is lined up behind Cruz right now.
Yeah.
To try to.
Which is kind of funny because a year ago.
Oh, they hated him, they still hate him. But they don't want Trump to come in, and so they're backing him right now. Now, in the end, we could talk that they would be no more in favor of Ted Cruz to be our nominee than they would be Donald Trump.
Paul Ryan supposedly took himself out of the running today, but do you think there's some nefarious plot on the GOP's part to parachute some candidate in there to be the savior? Mitt Romney, I mean, those names are still being floated out there. Yeah. Do you think that somehow in the end they're going to give lip service to Cruz, but in the end they would torpedo him and cut his throat and leave him laying in his pile of blood just as they would do Trump?
I think it'd be very destructive. I think Steve and a lot of them said you're not vetted. Now, one of the names being floated about now is not even Paul Ryan or Mitt Romney's not talked about much, but Scott Walker is being talked about a little bit more in the last few days. And it was coincidence, maybe or maybe not, that when Trump spoke favorably of Rubio and Kasich, he also spoke favorably of Scott Walker.
And I really like Scott Walker. Early on in the thing, we both agreed that Scott Walker looked like, in the preliminary run-up to everything, that he looked like he had all his eggs in a basket for it. And the bottom just fell out of him because if there was somebody that had no energy, and you was there, Tom, up the names, and he was the last guy out, which was kind of unfair, but he just looked like he had no energy.
I agree, and he didn't manage his resources very well. But I do think that there's some concern that Scott Walker might be the one, and perhaps that's why Donald Trump is speaking favorably to try to get on his good side to make sure, hey, I've got a cabinet position for you over here, buddy. Sure. But don't mess up my parade here at the convention. I don't know.
Bob, you have a question?
Yes, it's a question from me. I'm not reading it.
Uh-oh.
What I've been noticing is that Trump and Cruz, all of them, are promising things that they will do if they're president. And I guess my question is, I'm going to build a wall. I know Cruz said he was going to build a wall too later. And, we're going to get rid of all of the Syrian or illegal immigrants or...
My wall's better than your wall.
Right. But the question is, can they truly do that as president without the Congress?
Congress has already voted it, Bob. This was voted for years ago. It wasn't properly funded or done. Only a small stretch of it was, but it was already voted for. So in the annals of what all Obama has done with his pen and his phone in executive orders, this would be no stretch. Once it's already been voted for by the House and the Senate, they've already proved this. This is not a stretch. So maybe getting the funding, but Trump says he can get Mexico to pay for it, and there is a way that you could get get Mexico to pay for it.
Yeah, but won't they? The way Trump says Mexico will pay for it is they'll actually add taxes on it coming out of Mexico.
Be like some kind of a tariff situation.
Which means you and I end up paying more.
Because we've got our net resources are going down to Mexico. We are paying them now. So he would, in essence, carve out a percentage of those payments and withhold them while he paid for his fence. I am all for the fence, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the fence only makes sense. And it doesn't all have to be a physical fence because we've got the technology with drones and sensors and everything else to find out. And the only thing that's stopping us right now from getting a lot of them stopped is that Obama's threatened some of those border agents with their jobs if they do their jobs.
Yeah.
It is an absolute disgrace. If we had a media worth its salt, Mac, that's the kind of thing to be talked about. 100,000 Muslims coming in quietly into our country without being vetted would be a big deal. But Obama gets by with all of this.
I'm well, the media wasn't like this when I got into it. When I went to journalism school, integrity was top. I mean, if you didn't have complete integrity, you were lowered to some standard like the National Enquirer. Now the National Enquirer has to raise its standards or lower its standards to be part of the NBC, CBS, ABC crowd.
Do you think that Trump is arrogant enough or moxie enough to actually keep some of these promises, whereas some of these other candidates are just a lot of bluster? They get there and they get shut down by the Congress. Do you think Trump's the kind of guy that could really maximize the bully pulpit like it should be used? How Ronald Reagan got on it. If he wanted something, Reagan got up and he demanded it, and the people forced the Congress into it. Do you think Trump could be capable of that?
All right, well, listen, I think that's a good question, Frank, and that's what's troubling I and a lot of people, because we've seen him change fundamental stance in a matter of short period of time on life and on other issues. And so anybody that can flip over without a defined road to Damascus moment could easily get into the White House and say, oh, well, I've got new information here and I've changed my mind. And that's my fear. With Reagan, we had a man of conviction.
Right.
I think with Cruz, we've got a man of conviction. I'm just not sure what we've got with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know how we got in this position. We got hungry to hear what we wanted to hear rather than hear the truth. And I think if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have started out with Jeb Bush. I don't think I would have been on anybody else but Jeb Bush, because I think he's the only one out there that's trustworthy. Gosh darn his last name, he should have changed it to Coates or Thomas or Montserrat or something like that.
Or Jindal.
Or Jindal, yeah.
But we all can agree that we know with Hillary what we're going to get.
Yep.
There is no question mark there. And so Trump or Kasich or Cruz or anybody's going to be far better, Steve said.
Wouldn't you like to see that be a prison jumpsuit?
I absolutely would. Yes, I would, Frank.
All right, Tom, thanks for being here. Frank, thanks for being here. Bob Montserrat, thanks for being here. Jeb, thanks for being our producer today. And you at home, thanks for listening. The Bible Answer Man, Hank the Bible Answer Man, is coming up next right here on a station that is one thing. It's the truth. Tonight, go home, forgive that person you've been holding a resentment against, because remember, the good Lord says, as you forgive, you shall be forgiven. I'll see you at church.